Thank you for being here. Hi, hello. So, I am first, of course, going to talk about Angela Ma's piece. It was a joy and such a privilege to get to read all of your work. And it was really hard to choose, and it made me really envious of your professors to get to work with you. And Angela Ma's piece, it was particularly appealing to me. And I want to emphasize that to me because I don't know, maybe some of you writers are less sensitive than I am. But as for me, anytime I don't get picked for something, anytime I don't get chosen for an award, anytime I try for a fellowship or an award or a residency and I don't get it, I feel slammed to the ground. And what I've realized over time is that taste really is subjective. I mean, everyone says that, but I think I've realized, I don't know about you, but so I keep records of how many books I read in a given year. I keep records of the titles, who it's by. I also keep records of whether or not they're of color, if it's a woman or a man or non-binary, because I want to know what I'm reading and I want to read more women than men, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I also keep a column where I star my favorites, and there aren't that many favorites, I've realized. Like in a given year, I'll read 60 to 100 books, and I'll star like 5 books, and 3 of them will be rereads of Virginia Woolf. It's a question of falling in love, and falling in love is so subjective, right? And so I loved Angela's piece, but that doesn't mean that the pieces I didn't pick were not lovable, were not worthy, were not exciting. I think they were all exciting, but I just happened to particularly love Angela's piece. So, moving on to what I read. Part of what I loved about it was its precision of language. There was an understated and then incredibly overwhelming heartbreak to the words in a very short piece, as you'll soon see. I think it capped out at 5 pages, and to put it differently, I wanted to read so much more from her. I wanted to read a book from her. I wanted to spend more time with these characters. Angela Ma is a 4th-year economics and creative writing major. During her time at UChicago, she lived in San Francisco, LA, Dakar, and Beijing. And she's worked jobs in fossils, tech, film, and research. And she's backpacked Eastern Australia as a farmhand. Angela Ma.
Hi guys. Really quick, I just want to say Aro Kwan's book, The Incendiaries, wrecked me, and if you haven't read it, you should definitely get to it. So I'm going to read a short story called The Wrist-Catching Knee Hang. Our last Father's Day together, I invited Baba to Trapeze Arts Chicago, where back in August, I'd won a free beginner's class for 2. It was a hulking warehouse in an empty lot. The season's first snow came down crisp and white, so that even the desolation of the place looked new and full of promise. At 2 minutes past 4, Baba showed up on a divvy bike, one of those pale blue bicycles the city's got docked by the dozen on every other corner. He parked it in the bike share station, jammed his hands in his pockets, and crossed the road with his head bowed against the wind. "You're joking," I said when he walked up to me. "How long did it take you to get here?" $3. Single ride, he said, his expression taking on a proud, faintly devious air I recognized as yet another victory in the non-existent case of Wu versus the United States economy. "No, how long?" I said. It turned out he had biked 2 hours north from Chinatown, where he still lived, in the snow, against the wind. And he was fine about that, but as soon as I explained the activity I'd picked for us, he scowled and began to mutter. "I am old man," he said. "This is ridiculous." "Dad," I said, exasperated, "I came here with my team at work, and everyone was fine, even Steve. And Steve's 65, at least." "Okay," said Baba. "I go, okay? Your father make fool of himself. You like that?" I gave him a once-over. Thin lips, hunched shoulders, nylon pants, and puffy jacket. Pouting. "Christ," I said finally. "You'll be fine, no big deal." And I shouldered the door open. Nothing had changed since my last visit. Heavy nets hung wall to wall. Buckets of white chalk accompanied spindly metal ladders. Ropes, wires, and carabiners dangled like ornaments from the bar-ribbed ceiling. Patricio, same yellow teeth, same curly-Q mustache, greeted us at the door. We signed our waivers, ditched our jackets, and followed him onto the mats. Got into our harnesses. First time for both of you? Patricio asked, looking to me. Just him, I said. Excellent. Well, let's start with some solo exercises to get you warmed up. Since there's 2 of you, we'll have our grand finale be a basic partner toss, the wrist-catching knee hang. As Patricio went over the basics, I zoned out. Beside me, Baba listened with pursed lips. In the presence of a stranger, he'd regained some of his old authority. His legs were apart, his posture rigid. He saw me looking and crossed his arms. I completed my first few exercises easily, not thinking at all. Wind rushing, Patricio shouting as he worked the ropes, "Tighten your core, lock your arms." My feet dangling, the ground whisking through the diamond-shaped holes of the net. Baba's figure in snapshots, tiny over the distance like a toy soldier. When it was Baba's turn, I went to the office to retrieve my phone. I responded to a text from my fiancé, then wrote an email, and then wrote 3 more, leaning against Patricio's desk in the semi-dark. I felt strangely apprehensive. I went up to Baba's jacket and checked the collar. There it was, a zigzag tear mended with red string. It was the same coat he'd worn all my life, probably even before that, back in China. I let go. The fabric was cold and sopping wet. I ended up returning 30 minutes later, just in time to see Baba complete a swing, riding to peak height before releasing his grip on the bar. Patricio worked the ropes as he fell, slowing him down until he landed on his back with surprising grace. "See," I said, oddly relieved, walking over to help him dismount. "You're not an old man. You're getting the hang of it." His cheeks were flushed. He smiled at me. It turned out Baba had completed all his swings, the necessary trials, while I was in the office, and Patricio announced it was time to gather round for the grand finale. This time, I listened closely to his instructions. Partner tosses were unfamiliar territory, extremely complex, relying on trust and timing, not for corporate team bonding events. At some point, Baba and I exchanged a look. I saw myself in his face, nervous and listening intently because of it, taking note of every detail, dissecting the process into tinier and more insignificant steps until it became nothing at all. "So," said Patricio, "who wants to catch, and who wants to fly?" "I catch," said Baba, before I could even open my mouth. I looked at him. He shrugged. Baba crossed the gym to the opposite platform. We climbed our respective ladders in parallel. Each time I lifted a hand or foot, I caught a similar flicker of motion in my peripheral vision. Dozens of feet above the net, we stood on our platforms and swiveled to face each other. We took our bars off their pegs and tested their wires with sharp tugs. Down below, Patricio called, "Wrist-catching knee hang. Mr. Wu, 1, 2." Baba leaned forward and jumped off his platform. The partner toss meant both of us swung upside down, anchored to our bars by sweaty knees, hands and heads dangling. At Patricio's signal, I, the flyer, would arch my spine and stretch my arms back as far as possible. Unhook my knees, let myself fall. Trust that Baba, the catcher, would grab my wrists and swing me home, to his platform, to his side, to safety. In my mind, I added some extra steps before falling. Squeeze my eyes shut. Try not to scream. I leaned forward and adjusted my grip on my bar. Baba whooshed towards me, slowed, and whooshed away again. Patricio yelled, "Eric!" Every microstep from his instructions cascaded through me like dominoes. In one motion, I swung from the platform, brought my knees up in front of me, hooked them over the bar, let go, hung upside down, opened my hand, wiggled my fingers. The world was hurtling, humming. The scent of Baba's homemade pork buns and Chinatown laundry soap. Patricio, that scent again. My hair in my eyes, ropes and carabiners clanging madly. The floor, the walls, and then Patricio. "Eric, go." Detach. And, even before I was completely airborne, Baba caught me. Suddenly, the world flipped upright. Baba was holding me with firm hands. His palms were rough, his thumbs pressed into my wrists. I was astonished by the strength of his calm as we swung one unit from high to low to high again. "All right," shouted Patricio. "Let him go." For a moment, Baba's grip tightened. We swung for an extra beat, and in that split second, a thought flashed in my mind. He's not going to let go. But then I was falling, my descent slowed by the friction of the ropes, until finally I lay on the net, watching Baba soar alone above me, each pendulum arc shorter than the last. He'd caught me so fast I didn't have a chance to shut my eyes. We did the toss twice more. By then, we were in the last 5 minutes of our session, and Patricio was getting antsy. "Switch," he said, rubbing his stomach. "Eric, your turn to catch. Mr. Wu flies." "No," said Baba. It took me a moment to realize what had just happened. "What?" "Nuh-uh." He was adamant. "Dad, why?" He had crossed his arms again. "Tired," he said. "Old man." "Oh, come on," I said. "Just once. You can trust me, I promise. I'll catch you." Baba surveyed the gym. Eyes squinted, mouth puckered. It was a look I hadn't noticed until high school, and ever since, couldn't stand. "Okay," he said finally. "Fine." So we scaled the ladders again, this time with me on the catching side. The procedure felt natural by now. Listen for Patricio's shout, jump, knees, hook, hang. The only difference was the role reversal. Now, Baba would be the one to let go, to trust me to bring him home. And he didn't. I arched my back as far as my spine would allow, stretching out my arms, opening my hands wide to show I was ready to grab. We swung toward each other. Baba made a small motion, reaching out toward me, but for some reason, changed his mind. A split-second decision. His hands returned to the bar. We swung apart again. I felt my arc losing momentum. "Mr. Wu!" called Patricio. Baba missed another opportunity. On my next swing toward him, I saw him give up and unhook his knees. I heard over the wind in my ears his ropes zippering through their carabiners. He had dismounted. Once I was on the ground too, Patricio asked if we wanted to try again. I looked at Baba. He shook his head once, curt. I didn't push him further, knowing that once he got like this, it was pointless. Instead, disappointed, I walked to the office to retrieve our jackets. Outside, the snow had stopped, but was pressed thick and oppressive to everything. There must have been at least 4 inches. It had got to be the kind of snow that felt so opaque. I feared if I tried to reach through it, somehow the surface it hid would be infinitely out of reach. It was the kind of snow that buries homes, buries cars, turns the air hazy when the wind blows too hard. It frightened me, and I couldn't say why. Baba could not get far on his bike. I called an Uber, and we had dinner at a seafood place, and then we sat through a movie in silence, and I called him an Uber home. Thank you.